Amen. Praise God. Wow. Anybody else? Let's open our Bibles this morning to Psalm 23. This is the most requested of all the Bible promises that I've asked you for. And if you haven't been with us, we're in the middle of a study on Bible promises. We're calling it Keys of Promise, those passages of Scripture that have encouraged us. We're taking a break from our normal Bible exposition through the book of Revelation just to stop and gather hope. We want to know what truths anchor us in God, that remind us of His character, that will hold us no matter what comes. And of all the requests, as it were, that have come in, of all the things that I've been carpet bombed on my cell phone via text, the one that has come in most is this one, Psalm 23. And there's a reason for that. The reason, of course, little kids who've grown up in our church, they know it, they can quote it, they can say it. One of them came up to me this morning, boom, had it lockstep. But it has, like John 3:16 does, such a simplicity and purity, but such an inexhaustible depth and profundity to it that we never grow past it. And the promise here for us is in verse 6, surely, there's some assurance, right? Surely, goodness and loving kindness, you might have a translation that says steadfast love, you might have a translation that says mercy, but surely goodness and loving kindness will follow me. We just sang it, didn't we, this morning? All the days of my life. And I will dwell in the house of the Lord. How long? Forever. This is a promise that no matter how bad it is or how amazing it is, our God, who condescends to be our shepherd, guarantees that no matter where we go, we sang it, loving kindness and goodness will run after us, chase after us, pursue us, hunt us all the days of our life. You could probably mouth the words with me as I read it. I'm going to start from the beginning, this sweet psalm of David, who himself, as you know, was a shepherd. Listen to afresh, I pray, these words. And just as a footnote, I've preached Psalm 23 so many times in my ministry. I've preached it at so many different memorial services celebrating the life and the legacy of those who have trusted in these truths. I challenged my own heart this week to say, I'm going to wipe out virtually everything else I know about this psalm, and I'm just going to start over fresh and take a hard look once again at this truth, just to let my heart stir up in a way that I pray yours does as well. You follow along in your copy of God's Word as I just read these precious, precious truths, this Psalm of David. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside quiet waters. He restores my soul. He guides me in the paths of righteousness for His name's sake. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for you are with me. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. You have anointed my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and loving kindness will follow me all the days of my life. And I will dwell in the house of the Lord, say it, forever. One of the most beloved passages in all the Bible, is it not? There's a reason this is endured. This is the reason you reach for this when you need hope. There's a reason when everything goes upside down and sideways and you don't know how to handle the berserkness of all that's unfolding, you run to the simplicity and the purity of a truth that centers us on the goodness of God. And we've been singing about that all morning. And all my life, He's been faithful, hasn't He? Right? All your lives, all our lives have been so, so good. And even as you were singing that, my prayer has been that you were doing what my heart was doing, rehearsing all those times where God, in spite of us, was so kind to us, so good, so patient, so loving. But the analogy that David chose to wrap our hearts around the goodness of God was that of a shepherd to his sheep. And it's fascinating. Jesus, you might remember, did the same thing. when Jesus wanted to speak of himself in John chapter 10 as to who he is and how we relate to him, of all the different metaphors that he used, he made sure that he would include John 10, I am the good what? Shepherd. And the fact that he's not only the good shepherd, because shepherding is synonymous with goodness, he himself wanted us to understand that he is the source, the origin, and the termination point of everything in terms of goodness as it relates to us. And so the goodness of God appears to us in verse 6, but it's all the way through. And if you want a definition for goodness, you could just write it this way, 3 words, his overwhelming care. His overwhelming care. In fact, that's the big idea for this morning, stated very simply and very, very purely. Our God will always take care of us. That's the big idea. Our God will always, always, always take care of us. That there is a goodness from God, that there is a kindness and a mercy. In fact, you may not know this, but theologians will describe the goodness of God as an attribute of attributes. It's sort of like a super attribute. That when you talk about God's goodness, you're not talking about just one among many of those qualities that we learn to love and depend on. God's goodness encompasses grace, where he gives us what we don't deserve. It encompasses mercy, which is found in the Hebrew word hesed here in verse 6. It encompasses love. It encompasses kindness. And it encompasses the patience of God. And so God's overwhelming care for us, or as we said, the big idea, our God will always take care of us, is something that you can expect God to do over and over and over again. Now, let me just stop you on the shepherd part for a second. When it comes to God as the shepherd, God himself takes upon himself a term that was a little bit more like a blue-collar worker in the ancient world. Shepherds weren't particularly notable. Shepherds were more of the lowly task. It's not very glorious work. You don't get compensated quite a bit for this work. It's frankly a thankless job, a great deal of commitment and even risk, because you're carrying around with you everywhere you go all the predators you fear most, their lunch. And so you are always in the watchful eye of someone who's waiting to see, do I really have what it takes to take on this shepherd? And the shepherd himself was one who, as Jesus would even say in John chapter 10, has to be willing, and this will become important at the end, right? To lay down his what? Life for the sheep. A hireling, not a shepherd, is just somebody who's contracted to watch over them, but as soon as danger comes, boom, he bolts. The shepherd is someone who was alone most of the time. He spent day and night with these animals, and he smelled like what? Sheep, right? Mostly outdoors, sun and rain, heat and cold, wind and calm. They couldn't be left alone, so he couldn't leave them alone. And sheep have this proneness to do what? They have this proneness to wander. So now I have to make sure that I can safeguard these sheep while going after the one or the several that keep wandering off as they are either spooked or enticed to go away from the fold constantly. Sheep are not particularly loyal animals. They're pretty stupid, which is oftentimes why we, footnote, are compared to sheep, right? All of us, Isaiah 53, like sheep have gone, yeah, that's the nature of a sheep, to go astray. That's why God, in his love and kindness, compares us to sheep. They're not particularly smart. They're not good for conversation. They're not really aware of the danger that they're constantly in until they're in it, and they are not very kind. I don't know if you've ever been around sheep. They love to bite you back. If you Google, not now, but after the message, the sheep headbutting the shepherd, you will watch the takedown of a flock of sheep take down their shepherd and nail that shepherd over and over. You don't want to look, but you don't want to look away. It's not funny, but it's totally funny. But it's a picture of sheep. It's what we do. It's what we do to each other, and it's oftentimes what we try to do to the Lord. And if I was a shepherd, frankly, I might be in that context going, you know what? I might eat lamb chops for dinner to the one who wanders away, but not the great shepherd. The great shepherd is the one who shows his goodness. And shepherding isn't easy. But the Lord, and he even uses, David does, this covenant name of God, Yahweh, to say, can you believe? Listen to this. The covenant making, covenant-keeping, faithful God, Yahweh himself, the one who invites me to intimacy with the master of the universe, has condescended to step into that role for me. So carefully, so tenderly, so closely, walking with me, coming after me, pursuing me, leading me and feeding me, and then rescuing me over and over and over again. And of course, you know, as it says in the little prescript before the psalm, those are inspired, by the way. When you read the Psalms and you see the heading that's put there by the Bible translators, and then in tiny little print in front of the psalm, it says a Psalm of David. That's verse 1 in the Hebrew. So it's meant for us to understand. David says, I want you to know not only I wrote this as if like I want credit for it, but David is the king of Israel, but before he was king, he was also the shepherd. So it's interesting. Here's the man. This is a point for our men to pay attention here, right? Here is a man of mans, right? Here is a king who has led Israel to the high water mark. Here is the man after God's own heart that God said, my great-great-grandson, your great-great-grandson David, who comes after you, will be my king, my Messiah, who will rule and reign on your throne forever and ever and ever. So the one coming after David is the one who's going to crush Satan's head, the sovereign Lord who will rule over all things. And by the way, you know how he's described in Isaiah 40? He's also a shepherd. He's going to shepherd my people Israel. But watch this. David, you're the king. But the best preparation I could ever give you for leadership as the king is not how to throw down your authority. It's not how to boss people. It's not how to make high-level decisions. It's how to get low and stink with sheep as you care for them. And David, don't let your view of shepherding keep you from anything other than a humble, meek posture before God who himself shepherds you. So David, in other words, is saying in this psalm, though he's at the top of the food chain in Israel, he's the highest authority in the land, and he was groomed and prepared all his life for that in the sheepfolds to do now with a crown on his head with people what he was doing with a staff in his hand with sheep. Here is a man, strong, bold, courageous, told to submit himself to God like a sheep. And so there's a meekness here. But this didn't originate with David. You might think that David was the first person to see the portrait of God as a shepherd. Actually, he's not. If you go all the way back to Genesis 48, Jacob said, God has been my shepherd all my life to this day. Genesis 49, God is described as the shepherd of Israel. And when God commissioned him, David, as king of Israel, he said this in 2 Samuel chapter 5, you will shepherd my people Israel, and you will be a ruler over Israel. Psalm 78, verse 70, it says, God chose David and took him from the sheepfolds, from the care of ewes and suckling lambs, and he brought him to shepherd Jacob, God's people. And so it says of David, he shepherded them according to the integrity of his heart and guided them with his skillful hands. And what David is saying is, God, you who, when I was out there under those starry skies, taught me lessons that I didn't even know that I needed, are applying those things to me now as king, but you're also doing those things to me. God, you are my shepherd. And I think that's important because David's also a warrior, isn't he? David is this massive, bold, strong leader. But here he understands he is a sheep. And so what we're going to see David do is not only model, but receive from God what he as a leader so desperately needs, and that's God's overwhelming care. So can I say it this way? This is a psalm about who shepherds the shepherd. Who shepherds the shepherd? Who shepherds you, men, as you shepherd your families? Who shepherds you, wives, as you care for your children? Who shepherds the shepherds? It was David even who in Psalm 80, listen to this, he cried out to God and he said, give ear, and he calls God this title, Shepherd of Israel. You who lead your people like a flock. Do you see that? My leadership isn't my ability to call the shots. My leadership is God, you leading through me. You who are enthroned above the cherubim. Isn't that amazing? The shepherd who is lowly is the one who is exalted above the angels. And so literally now, God, writing, as Peter would say in 1 Peter 5, about the great shepherd or the chief shepherd, says, Yahweh shepherds me. Now, would you notice how personal, and this is another reason why this psalm is at the heart of many of the songs that we sing, because it's so personal. This is a testimony song. Notice, the Lord is my shepherd. I shall not want. He makes me lie down. He leads me. He restores my soul, guides me, even though I walk. Do you see how many times David is drawing attention to how personal God is? Sometimes we make the mistake of looking at a song and go, well, there's too much I, me, and my in there. Have you ever read Psalm 23? This isn't a self-centered psalm. This is a psalmist who can't believe that God is so personal to him. Me. Sinful me, ungodly, undeserving, should be swimming in the lake of fire right now, me. Yahweh leads me. 17 times he uses the personal pronoun I, me, or my, and just says, I need you, O shepherd, and you have been so good to me. You care for me, you love me. If you'd have left me to myself, I would have destroyed myself. And here's what we're going to see this morning as we apply the same lesson that David did to himself. Sheep need a shepherd to survive. We need a shepherd to survive. A shepherd who would do whatever it takes to care for us. Now, the word here used for shepherd actually refers to a variety of things. It can include ruling. It can include leading. It can include guiding and directing with authority. You call out where you want me to go. You tell me what you want me to do. David is surrendering. But would you also notice, and this is where we start getting into the sweetness of what it means personally at the end of verse 1. If the Lord, Yahweh, is my shepherd, then what's it say? I shall not what? Want. I shall not want. Now, to want is to lack. You know what he's saying? I lack nothing. If I have the shepherd, I have everything. So the title of this morning's message is The Promise of Our Shepherd. It's not simply the promise that the shepherd makes, that goodness and mercy will follow us all the days of our life and we'll dwell in the house of the Lord forever. It's the promise of him. We get him. And whether you're on the mountaintop or you're in the valley, you get him. He is the one who shepherds you. So to say it differently, if you want to begin to apply what the psalmist is saying, I shall not want, I don't lack, what it means is that if we have God our shepherd, we are without anything else totally able to be content. All that he has, all that he is, makes us completely content. We lack nothing. Why? Because not only does he provide for us what we need, he himself is enough. God is personally involved in our care, and maybe we need a definition of contentment. Would you write this down? Here's contentment. All that I have and all that I am, minus sin, is all that I need. Okay? All that I have and all that I am, minus sin, is all that I need. And even in my sin struggles, isn't he enough? Answer? Yeah, absolutely he is. He's the one whose sufficiency keeps me coming back. He's the one who in my guilt resolves the issue of the shame in my soul and removes it. In my fears, he's the one who gives me a peace that passes understanding. In my guilt, in my fear, in my agony, in my trial, in my pain, in my suffering, in my confusion, even in moments of humiliation and embarrassment, he is still as committed to me as he ever was. You know why? Because that's his nature. Now, we're not saying that contentment means that you find a level of spiritual complacency. That's not what contentment is. Well, I'm just content where my growth is right now, so I want to push cruise and like throttle off. No. You have those smart driving cars where you can push cruise, you can push lane assist, and you can recline your chair back. I may have done that yesterday on the way home from California. And you can just sit there and go, I'm fine for a while. Can't do that spiritually. Can't do that spiritually. God will not let you do that. You have to keep up with the shepherd where he's leading. But to be satisfied in the shepherd is what David is saying. Because the Lord shepherds me, I have all that I need. I lack nothing that I truly need. And sometimes this is hard because we come to God with requests and we say, God, I need this. And I need this now. And I need this yesterday. If you needed it, you would what? have it. You say, no, it doesn't work like that. I really, 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 really believe I need it. No, God is the one who guarantees that we who think we know better, we think we know where we should go, we think we know what we should have a God who says, no, I want to guide you and provide you. So what David is saying, I want more of your guiding. I want more of your providing. I want more of your protection. I want more of your care in my life. And by the way, can I just say, we are in a wonderful position, are we not, to do this to each other? Has not God given us each other as the means by which we care for and shepherd each other? Does it not say in 1 Corinthians 12 that all the members of the body have the same care for one another? Shouldn't there be something in us that presses in hard to show the goodness of God to each other in the way that God has equipped us? Answer, yes. So then I say all that to say the rest of this psalm is how to be content in the goodness of God. Now there's two places, if you want to be specific, but there's two times in our lives that are given to us metaphorically in Psalm 23 where God will guide, lead, protect, and give us everything we need. Here they are, on the mountain and in the valley. You have both of these in the text. You have on the mountain, and that's where the peaceful waters flow. That's where the lush hills are. If you go to Israel with me in March, or you've been to Israel with me, you'll see that there are some really, really beautiful, lush places where green grass grows and is overflowing. And as the winds blow, you'll see them just waving this grass. And you'll see shepherds with their sheep all over the hillsides. But then you'll find the most desolate, arid places you could possibly imagine. As soon as you leave the mountain and you go from the mountain to another mountain, you have to pass through the valley. There's a reason why we talk about mountaintop experiences. It's because of this psalm. There's reasons why we understand that when I'm on the mountain, I'm in a place where it feels like it couldn't be any better. God is so kind. God is so good. I'm rejuvenated. I'm restored. I can see clear. I can think. And as I look down at the valley below, there's nothing there to harm me or threaten me. Oh, there may be things that are hidden down there, but those things are so far away, and I can see for miles up here. Can I please build a home here and stay here? And we have those experiences spiritually where we say, God, I'd just love to build everything right here in the place where the lush green grass grows, peaceful water is flowing high above dangers and difficulties that feel so far away. But the shepherd knows in order to guide me to where he ultimately wants me to be, the only way forward is through the valley. And he talks about the valley, and I'm going to show you a picture later this morning of the actual inspiration for David writing the Valley of the Shadow of Death. There's an actual place in Israel where the Valley of the Shadow of Death is. You can go see it. It's a scary place. It's appropriately named, but it's such a rich metaphor to say, you know what he's saying? If I have the shepherd with me next to those peaceful waters and everything feels so full and so rich like it couldn't get any better, or if I am in the worst, scariest, most dangerous place on the planet, if he is there, here's the guarantee: goodness and mercy will follow. If it doesn't feel like goodness and mercy are in there, that's not true. It is. Goodness and mercy will follow me all the days of my life because my shepherd is able to care for me at every level. So in any circumstance, God is going to care for us with his goodness, and I want you to know what those are. So can we start on the mountain? Let's talk about the mountain. This is everybody's favorite place. Let's go to the mountain and you can think of times in your life, and maybe you're having one right now. Maybe you're at a time in your life where you go, I can't believe the goodness of God. It's so easy for me to press into him. It's easy to pray. It's easy to be in his word. I get up in the morning. I have coffee over here. I have the smell of bacon over here. I got my Bible open right here. And the kids got themselves up and dressed themselves. They made their lunches. Nothing needs to be ironed. They're sitting there waiting for their next instruction as to how they could obey perfectly. And I'm so undisturbed and unruffled in a place of eternal blessedness. You there? Nobody? Okay. All right. Well, maybe you've been there. Maybe you have times in your life where you go, I'm not really going through anything hard right now. There was a hard time, but this is a season of abundance for us. And if it is, praise the Lord. And it's not like, well, get ready because the valley's coming. Enjoy this. Love this. Savor this. Your shepherd takes you to those mountaintops because he wants you to have three things, okay? God is going to, on the mountain, provide three things. Are you ready? Here's the first one, refreshment. On the mountaintop, God's going to provide you with refreshment. Look at verse 2. He makes me lie down. He makes me lie down. Now, this means also my propensities to run ahead away from the goodness and the blessing that he supplied for me might mean that I miss some of the things that are essential. And those are the things that are necessary for the valley. I have to stop. I have to rest. I have to eat. I have to drink. This is for my good. He makes us lie down. Here he's providing the sheep green pastures. And here he's providing quiet waters. Now, green pastures is a metaphor in this scripture. For us as believers, it's a dwelling place. It's a place of rest. It's a place of calm. It's a place where it's open and you would be guided to a spot where everywhere you turned your eye, you would just be in awe that you're there. You're so forgetful of yourself. You're so privileged to be in that place. And it seems like danger is so far away. Now, for sheep, this is where they would graze. Pick a spot anywhere you want. Enjoy. Savor. And sometimes, because the prosperity preachers so abuse these verses, we get averse to enjoying the blessing and the goodnesses of God. And that's wrong. We should receive what God has provided for us. When he takes us to a suitable place to have our needs met, we should enjoy that. It's where the sheep could have more than abundant food. It's where the shepherd looks for the best possible place. And again, if you're in Israel, these are there, but they're not everywhere. And so there's a certain point at which if I'm a shepherd in Israel, I'm going to take my sheep there and I'm going to let them graze, but I also have to move them forward. You know why? Because sheep will, if you plop them down in one place and leave them there too long, they'll eat and they'll eat and they'll eat and they'll eat and they'll eat all the way down to the root, and they'll destroy the root and no grass will ever grow again. That's a problem in an arid place like Israel. So what happens is, watch this, the Lord knows how long to give you that refreshment. He knows just how much of that rest that you need. And he knows how, once you're fed and rested, to then call you up to follow his voice to the next place. And he will continue to guide. And sometimes if you're like me, and I feel very sheepish sometimes, I'm like, where are we going? Why are we leaving? This is perfect. Why don't we just stay here forever? Because we'll get fat and sassy over here is why. God wants to move us to where he has planned. It also means that the shepherd has to know the places and has to scout out the places in advance and has to know the way to get us there too. And that's exactly what our shepherd does. He's concerned not only, can I say it differently, about our present needs, but he's also concerned about our future. God knows exactly where he's leading you. He knows exactly where he's guiding you, and he's giving you not only what you will enjoy, but the power to enjoy it. Same is true with water. Finding a watering hole that was adequate for a massive flock, very difficult. Something that's not polluted. If you're going to drink the water, you got to make sure some animal didn't die upstream and all the impurities and bacteria are running downstream that you're ingesting. Finding fresh water was a major challenge in Israel. There's two major seasons where it rains in Israel, and that water is largely, when it runs down, has to be collected in these underground cisterns. Otherwise, you don't really find springs and bubbling brook. There's the Jordan River, where if you could get to the Jordan, you can find some water channel. But for the most part in Israel, you really didn't have access to fresh and running water. So this was a bit more of a challenge, not for the sheep, but for the shepherd. And what he's saying is, I'm not only going to give you water. Look at what he says in verse 2. He leads me beside what kind of water? Still waters. Quiet waters. What that means is that it's not so much a white water. So you're not seeing churning of the water. You're not seeing fast-moving rapids. There's some of that in Israel. But you got to imagine, too, with all the sheep that are there, there's lots of crowding in those particular places, but you can't have them all together. You got to spread out. So there's some complexity to this. What can I just say? What's complex to a human shepherd is not complex to our God. But let me also add that sheep are easily spooked, and running water spooks them. unknown, unfamiliar sounds, spook them. And if they start running off in every different direction, the shepherd has to know how to corral them and to pull them in. And so they don't drink running water. It disturbs them. They would rather die of dehydration. But what he's saying here is on the mountain metaphorically, God will take us to those places where fears are far away, where the calm of an unruffled fellowship with a loving God, where no ripples, no movement, nothing that spooks you, gets you to a spot where there's no anxiety, no fear, no threat, not even the smallest ripple to alarm us. And some of you are like, I'd like that right now, please. Can we do that right now? I'd like to be teleported to the mountain. We all love the mountain. And there's a resting place there. And it says in verse 3, when he refreshes us, it's so that, verse 3, he will restore my what? My soul. The word restore is actually in the intensive in the Hebrew. It has a strength to it, and it provides for us an understanding of the second thing that God gives on the mountain. That's restoration. Restoration. So on the mountain, God will provide us with refreshment, and on the mountain, God will provide us with restoration. Restoration. Now, if you want to use a different word, you might use the word rejuvenation. You might use the word stability. You might use the word repair or healing or reconstruction or overhaul. It's a word that even describes if you're in a place where you've been through something really awful, you need to go to be recovered. This is a place where you need to be made healthy again. And again, this is likely coming up out of a valley where things were very difficult. We come into this plateau in this plain. We're now set forth before the Lord. He restores us, and he makes us lie down. Sometimes if we don't lie down, I've had to learn this in my life, he will make me lie down. He will give me things like double pneumonia and say, stop, and if I don't stop. But being restored is resting. In fact, the word rest is the first four letters of the idea of restoration. You have to rest. And he knows what we need. He knows when we need it because he's a good shepherd. And right now, can I say it this way? Wherever you are in your life is exactly where he wants you. He wants to guide you to those mountains. There may be times in our lives, can I say this to our own hearts by way of application? He may be leading us towards the place of rest, and we don't want to go because there's something very enticing, albeit harmful, in the valley that we're chasing after. And he's like, no. You need to be restored if I have to break your legs and carry you there. Did you know this? This is one of the things that shepherds will do. If, and this is, by the way, part of the meaning of the word restored. The word restored also means to be brought back to the place from which you departed. It's a synonym in the Old Testament for repentance. When we wander and we go the direction we shouldn't go and we can't find our way back, the Lord comes for us. But when shepherds had a sheep, and those of you who were with us when we walked through Psalm 51, you'll remember this. But when we go down the road that we shouldn't go and we continue to wander and continue to wander and continue to wander and continue to wander, the shepherd had a very, very effective, very painful way of keeping that sheep from wandering. Do you remember what it is? Snap their legs. You ever snapped a pencil? Heard those wood fibers pop? Well, imagine now the wandering sheep. Here's what our shepherd will do. And by the way, this is an expression of his goodness too that we don't typically want, but it's also good. He will take the wandering sheep and he will take his little legs and he will snap them. And he'll snap the second one, he'll snap the third one, and he'll snap the fourth one. Sheep can't move. Sheep can't wander. That's very effective. And then the shepherd will splint the leg of the sheep so that it is aligned and will heal. The only problem is the sheep can't what? Walk. So you know what the shepherd does? The good shepherd does? He scoops that little sheep up, and if it's a small enough lamb, he'll carry it in his bosom. If it's a large enough lamb, he'll put it on his shoulders, and that sheep will learn to depend on the shepherd everywhere it goes. Can't move. Can't bear weight on those bones because they're all broken. That's why David said in Psalm 51, let the bones that you have broken rejoice. Thank you, my shepherd, that you stopped me from wandering because you snapped my legs. Sometimes the consequences of our sin that we don't interpret as good are good because God says, I'm going to stop you from going any further. But the problem is I am completely dependent now and helpless upon you. And the Lord puts us over his shoulders or in his arms, and he carries us. And what he does then is he makes you lie down in a green pasture. He sits you there, and then you're chewing. But you know what he has to do? He has to scoop you up and move and adjust your body to set you down again to chew and chew there. And then when he knows you're thirsty, he scoops you up and he walks you over to the water and he bends down and puts the sheep's little nozzle in the water so that it could drink. And do you know what happens while that sheep's legs are healing? Listen, it learns to depend on the goodness of the shepherd. You know what's so effective about that tactic that sounds so harsh? It's not. Is that sheep never wanders again. The sheep whose legs are broken are the ones who are most loyal and close to the shepherd from that point on. Now, we don't want to get to the place where the Lord has to say, come here, snap. You don't want that. But in his goodness, if that's what it takes, he'll carry you to the mountain with broken legs rather than leave you to go after your wants in the valley. He promises that, which is why he restores our soul. Now, years ago, I don't know if I should have done this, but years ago I did physical therapy in a hospital. We were a little unorthodox in the hospital. That's to say the management and leadership was so lax and poor we could kind of get away with anything. And some of the things that we got away with, you shouldn't have gotten away with. And ultimately that hospital was bought out by UCLA Medical Center, and it was a great hospital. But I worked at this hospital, and I saw some of the most awful things. Like you walk into pre-op where they're putting together all the surgical tools, and the guy putting them together is like munching on Cheetos. He's got orange fingers while he's putting, all those sterilized tools wrapped up. And like, so why is it this hospital has so many infections, right? I remember walking to a patient's room one time. I was going to get him up out of bed, and I'm standing there at the bedside, and I'm like, okay, Mr., let's say Smith, let's go. And I go to take my foot off the floor, and it had adhered. There was something on the floor so sticky, hadn't been washed in forever. My foot was stuck to the floor. So I pulled my foot like this. The tile came up off the floor onto my shoe. And I pulled my other foot up, and another tile. I walked into the hallway with these tiles on my feet like this going, I think we have a problem in room 112, right? My wife and I had this plan. If I ever get in an accident and they bring me to this hospital, get me stable and get me out, I got a better chance of surviving on the asphalt than I do in that ER. Do not let me there. Well, I remember that I worked in the one area that was actually well done. It was the acute rehab facility. And there was a guy who had a dirt bike accident. He loved to race and jump dirt bikes. He jumped, he came down wrong. He broke his pelvis. He broke his femur, which I'm told is the worst pain ever. He broke that. He was in traction. He had a couple of his lumbar vertebrae that were fractured. Grateful to be alive. This is the classic cartoon example of the guy in the hospital, feet in traction, neck brace, black eye, that whole thing. Classic. He was there for a long time, and this was a guy who loved and missed the sun. And so for him, it was a forced rest because he would just go everywhere he went. But one day he's like, man, I'm just telling you, I'm hurting so bad in this hospital room. I can't move, I can't itch, I can't do anything. Is there any way you can roll my bed outside? And I'm like, man, sure. Ask forgiveness rather than permission in that case, right? So I'm rolling, which you see people going from building to building, like they're being transferred, right? So here's this guy with his leg up like this in traction, and we're rolling out, and I said, I'll stand here with you for a couple minutes, and you get a little vitamin D, and let's talk. You can't get out of bed, and so the 30 minutes I have with you, we'll just enjoy the sun and talking together. And of course, my question was, when you're done, like, is this lesson learned? Do you ever intend to go back to dirt biking? He goes, as soon as I'm out of here, I'm going back. I'm like, of course you are, right? So he said, is there any way that you can just leave me here and come back later? Like to bake in the Southern California sun out here? Sure. So I left him there, and I came back a couple hours later, and there he was in the sun. I'm like, you ready to go back in? Let's go back inside. What was he under? He was under rehabilitation, right there, and sunburn now because of me. I got in trouble for that. I did. It didn't go into my permanent record, but I was told never to do that again. But why do I say that? Because there are sometimes even this restoration is the result of us having to go through something hard to then see the value of the mountain. And to be close to the Lord, to be in intimate fellowship with him, even after we've done some stupid things. Maybe it would be worth praying in this season of your life, whatever it is, Lord, I want to go to the mountain. Would you lead me to the mountain? And if you've tried to take me to the mountain and I have resisted over and over again, I'm not resisting anymore. And if I'm in traction with my leg up in the air, just even there, would you guide me to a place of rest? And when it's time to go, and I don't want to go, then I'll trust you then too. Now this helps us understand the third thing that he does for us up on the mountain. He's gonna refresh us. He's gonna restore us. And then number three, the thing that he produces or provides for us on the mountain is righteousness. So you have refreshment, you have restoration, and you have righteousness. And I take that from verse 3. He restores my soul, and he guides me in the paths of righteousness. Now, the paths of righteousness mean what? We're moving now. What that means is we're not meant to stay in the same spot forever. If the things that you're thankful about in God doing in your life and you're learning are stale and old, it might mean that the shepherd has moved, but you've stayed behind and he's calling for you. It might mean that there's a path that you're on that he wants to take you in, but the path that he always leads, even the one back to him, is a path of righteousness. These are not only the right paths, these are the paths that we should go on compared to the paths we shouldn't go on. We said it earlier in Isaiah 53, right? All of us like sheep have gone astray. We have our own path. We want to go where the shepherd leads. That's why David would say in Psalm 25, make me know your ways, O Lord, and teach me your paths. Or he describes the wicked. Listen to this description of wickedness. Psalm 36, verse 4. He describes the wicked this way. The wicked man sets himself on a path that is not good. He does not despise evil. Isn't that interesting? The wicked person goes after something that not only is not good, he takes the way to it, but he doesn't despise the evil he's in pursuit of. See, the heart that David has is, Lord, strip away my crown, strip away this palace, strip away all my titles, all my robes, all my fill in the blank. Would you just please always and only keep my eye on the path that you want me to follow? So the mountaintop is where you grow. Can we say it that way? The mountaintop is where you're refreshed. The mountaintop is where you're restored. That's why he says in Proverbs 4:26, watch the path of your feet and all your ways will be established. Early on in my Christian life, somebody gave me this little poem by Joseph Bailey. He said it this well, and I thought this might be simple enough that you might expect it to be in children's church, but really we kind of all need to hear this, and especially the way it begins. Lord, I am such a stupid sheep. I worry about all sorts of things, whether I'll find grazing land and still cool water, a fold at night in which I can feel safe. I don't. See, on our own, we don't. I only find troubles and want and loss. I turn aside from you to plan my rebel way. I go astray. I follow other shepherds and even other stupid sheep. And then when I end up on some dark mountain cliffs before wild animals behind, I start to bleat, shepherd, shepherd, find me, save me, or I die. And you do. This is what our shepherd does. But just do know this, wherever he's guiding you, verse 3 says, it's for his name's sake. So do you see what's happening? I'm restoring you and refreshing you and growing you for my name's sake, he says. It's so that you will always do what is for my glory. So do you see it now? His glory and my good tied together. Wherever he leads you, it's the right path. That's the mountain. You'd be like, Pastor, close in prayer now, because I know where this is going. Let's turn now to talk about the valley. There is the mountain, which is lush and green. That's where the waterfalls are. That's where the oases are. That's where danger is so far away. We can hide. We can be safe. But now we're going to the valley. And there's a place where God will make sure that goodness and mercy will follow us there too. And in the valley, God protects us from three things. Here's the first one. First one is darkness. This is the valley of the what? Shadow. There's a shadow there. The place where God's loving kindness and goodness follow me is just the same as when I'm on the mountain. That's this promise. This promise applies to both. Goodness and mercy will follow you on the mountain. Duh. Goodness and mercy will follow me into the valley. Will it? Yes. Yes. We are more familiar with the valley because what's in the valley has the ability to get our attention. Verse 4, even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil. Why? For you are what? With me. Again, it's not because you've gone ahead of me and you've cleared the way. It's because you're there. You're there. Darkness is deep. Darkness is foreboding. It's gloomy. It's a shadow that hides the unknown. Here's a picture that I took in Israel of actual sheep on the mountain. I'm ready for that now. Here is the, thank you. Here's a picture actually of the place that is the valley of the shadow of death. And there happened to be that day an obliging shepherd on the very spot. Now, what happens is when you stand at the spot where I am, can you see not a lot of grass? There's a little, but how quickly can a flock that size devour that grass? He's got a bunch of lawnmowers with him, right? They're going to mow this lawn, and if you were to see where the sheep are standing, if you were to walk up to the edge where they are, you would see that right there is a very, very steep slope that you would not want to stand on because you would fall like the guy from Princess Bride, as you wish, all the way to the bottom. Remember that guy? That'd be you. So you stand there and you realize that these sheep, which have to now be guided by the shepherd as sure-footed animals, this makes it a little bit more complex. And you can't see it so well, but in the background there, where some of that green is, he's going to take them down there because there happens to be a little bit of water. But as you look down into that valley, that is a super steep walk where the propensity to fall, lose your footing, or to lose your way, or say, forget it. I don't even like to climb down from the valley. We have to stay here. There's no other way. The way is through the dark part, through the scary part. And what's also interesting, and we were there in the afternoon, it's super fun to read Psalm 23 right here, by the way. We're there in the afternoon, super blustery, super windy, but the sun was beginning to set in such a way that these rock formations down below that were crags had these lengthening shadows that looked like sharp points. So you see the crags anyway, but the way the sun was beginning to fall, cast its shadow on the ground, it had this lengthening, scary look. You know when you're a kid or your kids are afraid at night and the trees look like they do on those Disney movies from early on, like they're going to come into your room and gobble them up, and they look like that. So what happens is reality begins to be distorted by the darkness. All of our senses are stimulated, and everything that is normal isn't normal, but we're made to feel like it's supposed to be normal when it's not. And we don't recognize what we thought we knew and understood. That's this place. We don't like the darkness because we can't see. We don't like the darkness because we can stumble and fall. If you're like me, you probably keep your iPhone or whatever smartphone you have next to your bed so that in the middle of the night you can turn your little light on and just make your way towards the restroom or your kid's room or wherever it is that you're going. But these are the places where the shepherd's going to lead the sheep to. He takes us there. We don't like the dark. Spaces are tight in valleys like this. They're unfamiliar. It's possible to get separated from other sheep or to get stuck in a corner or to get turned around and you're not sure which way you're supposed to go and everybody else is moving on without you, but you don't know your way forward. We don't like the dark. We don't know if we're going forward now or backwards, and we don't know what's in the dark because anything could happen. And not only could something come at me, but I would never see it coming, so I can't prepare. And if it happens upon me in the dark, I can't react to it, but I also can't get away from it because I don't know the way out. Lord, what am I supposed to do? Answer, listen to the voice of your shepherd. There's sounds in the dark that we don't recognize and that we can't interpret. That's why in verse 4, it's a place of fear. It's where we're disoriented, where all of our senses are heightened. Fear makes us lose our sense that we're in control and that something or someone else is going to get control over us. And the more we fear, the more we begin to see things about ourselves. We begin to see our own inadequacies, our own powerlessness. And sometimes the worst thing that fear does to us is what it says about ourselves, the thoughts that begin to run through our minds while we're afraid. We're not so strong, brave, sure, wise as we think we are. We're alone, isolated, and vulnerable. And then we start making decisions, don't we? Out of instinct. We start making decisions out of fear. It says in Psalm 37:8, you might write this down, do not fret, which is the more animated form of fear. It only leads to evil doing. If I take counsel in my fears and I make a decision based out of fear, I will always not only choose the wrong thing, I'll choose evil, he says. But as long as our shepherd is with us, we can go. And some of you this morning might be in the valley. Some of you might be in the place where you don't know where he's leading you. You don't know where this is going because you can't figure out. You're good at planning, and you can't plan this one. You're good at seeing ahead and working your way backwards so that you know the plans and the backup plans, and you can't. And you have no human resource available to you, no lifeline you could tap, no person you could call, no money in the bank of that amount, no person of influence who could deliver you. You are totally surrounded and helpless. Except your shepherd's there. Some of you have gotten a health scare. And the doctors, you've used words that you've prayed over other people who are facing that. And now that word has come to you. You found yourself going, I don't know what this means. I don't know what the future holds. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Not ready for this. This is supposed to happen to somebody else. And then you start saying things like, but Lord, I've been a loyal sheep. I've been following you all this time. And I remember on the mountain how good it was. Why have you changed? He hasn't changed. He's still good. Our circumstances might tell you something about our God that's not true. He is still the same. He is still the loving, kind, merciful, patient, gracious God. He can see in the dark. And he knows the path he's taking you on. And he's inviting you to follow him. And sheep, when they're scared, they run. This is the point where we're inclined to run for a different reason. Not because we're enticed out of curiosity to follow something we shouldn't, but because we're scared to death. What are we scared of? Well, here's the second thing he protects us from. Not only darkness, but number 2, danger. In the valley, there will be darkness. He'll protect us from that. But he'll also protect us, verse 4, from danger. You see it in the middle of the verse? Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no what? Evil. There's evil in the dark. People with nefarious motives. Who would this have been for sheep? Predators. Can you think of any? Lions and tigers and, oh my, right? Wolves, coyotes, other humans, other shepherds wanting to steal somebody else's sheep. So many predators in the dark. And what David is saying, now remember, David is a pretty self-sufficient king, so it would seem from the outside. David is a valiant warrior who has rest on every side. David's armies are so locked and loaded and so successful in battle, he really doesn't have, from a human perspective, any credible threats. That's not what his hope is, though. His hope is, and his affirmation is, I fear no evil, for you are with me. And what is with me? Your rod and your what? Staff, they comfort me. Now, a rod would be about 2 feet long, like a billy club. Think of a policeman's nightstick. Its sole purpose is to whack the predator on the head and disable it or kill it. So the shepherd would have to have the willingness to get in that close of a proximity to an animal that would want to steal the sheep. And remember when David, when he came to Saul, and he's like, I'll take on Goliath, not because he's all that in a bag of chips, but because he was confident in his God. Remember what he said? He said, I have rescued the sheep from the lion's mouth and from the paw of the bear. So what he's saying is, you understand, sir, the lion's mouth was wrapping around my sheep, and I delivered it. And actually he goes, God delivered them, and my God will deliver us as well against this uncircumcised Philistine. He had no fear, not because he was polished and accomplished, but because he knew who his God was. And so he takes this nightstick. You ever stood next to a stuffed lion? I have. Those things are awesome and intimidating. I'll tell you my lion story. I've told some of you in the past, like my proximity to a lion, not a safe situation for me at all. Their heads are like huge, like this huge. But they are awesome, hulking animals. That's my sheep. I'm the shepherd. You don't touch my sheep. I don't care how big your teeth are. I've had to say that in ministry at times. I've had to say that to people who are predatory. I'm a shepherd and you're messing with my sheep. And as far as I'm concerned, you're a wolf. And what that means is you leave now or you get the rod. The rod wasn't primarily disciplinary for the sheep. It was fatal for the predator. It is the extent to which, can I shift now back to God, that God will go to do whatever it takes to protect us. The staff is more familiar to us. Last time I was in Israel, I was given this as a gift in Bethlehem. So this is Bethlehem wood. I think it's supposed to be a cane. I'll use that in later years. But it is a shepherd's staff. The staff is more familiar to us. I'm not going to do it, but this is where the shepherd could throw the staff, almost like a javelin, to spook the sheep and use their little spookedness to get back into the fold. But its primary purpose was to rescue a sheep that had been stuck. If a sheep falls down into a pit, I can scoop up and pull as I hook into the leg, like that. Thank you for being a prop. She had no idea that this was coming. Now, can he use this too to whack on an animal? Yeah. Absolutely. This is more likely to break than the policeman's nightstick in the form of the rod. But the other use for this staff, which was so important, wasn't just as a walking stick for the shepherd to lean on and chill when he's bored. It was in the valley. There are certain places in the valley where the footing is unsure. There's a place in the valley where the sheep, if it were to walk, would likely fall and roll down into a place that would hurt it or even kill it. So what the shepherd would do is on the places that are the most difficult for the sheep to walk, he would use the staff as a guardrail. And this little sheep, one by one, would walk across this very unsure place. And while the shepherd himself is having to do some pretty amazing footwork too, he's making sure that that sheep gets across safely to where it needs to go, and now next sheep. So that the staff in the hand of the shepherd brought reassurance to the sheep in the valley. When you go through the valley, you know what your shepherd does? He even guides your paths on those places where your foot is inclined to slip. He even makes sure that those enemies, by the way, he says, you prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. No, it was one thing to eat up on the mountaintop when fear and trouble seemed so far away. It's another thing to say, we're at this grassy spot and all I see are white eyes in the shadows. White eyes of predators who don't dare come at me because they see the staff in the hand of the shepherd too. They will not come because they can't possibly intimidate, threaten, or otherwise conquer this brave, brave shepherd. Would you hold that for me? Thanks. I feel like it's going to fall or I'm going to trip over it, and I don't want to do that. So here's a calm bravery. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. I can be at rest, God, as long as you are there. You know what that means? I can even find moments of restoration, refreshment, even among the enemies in the valley. There's also things that the valley has that shepherds have to be watchful for. When it says, you prepare a table before me where I'm eating, there were poisonous weeds. There were some places in the valleys where there were crags, where cliffs might allow a sheep to fall, dark caves where they might wander, or where wild beasts might hide, small holes where snakes would be nesting. What the shepherd has to do when he goes through the valley is go before the sheep to make sure that those things are not only cleared, but even in the places down there where they are feasting and all these enemies are, there might be enemies in a hole in the ground waiting to latch on to the face of a sheep and to and to poison it and kill it. Nope. Sheep can rest in the presence of the enemies because they're in the presence of the shepherd. And it says in verse 5, you've anointed my head with oil. What does that mean? Well, oil had a few different purposes in the ancient world. There were some times where they're being dirty or overgrown or whatnot. The shepherd would put oil on the head of the sheep and just take his head of hair and pull it back so the shepherd could see. You have a son or daughter like this where the hair is so overgrown you have to put something in their hair just to pull it back and hold it. Those products that we use. Well, more common even than that were when sheep would get themselves into a briar patch, or maybe a snake would bite, or it's possible that even in fence line, where a sheep would get stuck, in pulling to try to get its head out of the place where it's stuck, or out of the bush where the brambles and the briars are, that little face would get all cut up. What that means is that the shepherd every night before he pulled them into the fold and counted them one by one would look over and inspect every aspect of his little sheep, and if he would find a cut or an infection, he would medicinally cleanse and purify and sanitize that little sheep so even the healing ointment would begin to work. What that means is even when we do stupid things, and even when we're harmed in the valley, and even when we feel like we've been injured by difficult things or people or the stuff that we've caused for ourselves, the shepherd knows all of those little wounds and binds them up and heals us. He is attentive to the smallest detail. So can I say it this way? In the valley, he misses nothing. He sees everything. He cares with exquisite detail about everything that has happened to you and everything that you have done. You are always in the watchful eye of a shepherd who is good, because goodness and loving kindness follow you all the days of your life, even in those valleys. Wounds that would foul and fester, wounds that would have bugs and infection setting in. No, there would be a head anointed with oil. And would you notice in verse 5, the shepherd doesn't skimp on the oil. It actually overflows. He is just drenching us in goodness. You're drenched in grace. You're drenched in love. You're drenched in kindness. You're drenched in mercy. You're drenched in patience, and you will be all the days of your life. And the shepherd will protect you from darkness. He'll protect you from danger. And lastly, he'll protect you from death. He'll protect you from death. It is the valley of the shadow of what? Death. There is a time coming in our lives when we will walk down a valley that we won't walk out of. Or to say it metaphorically, there's a place called home, a mountain far away where we will go. And it's a mountain where no more enemies lurk in the darkness, no more injuries await us, no more wandering will entice us. That we will, as he says at the end of verse 6, dwell in the house of the Lord forever. This year we've seen several people that we love, haven't we, walk into this valley. There's several times where loved ones that we care for so deeply and have loved so well have taken this walk. And can I just promise you this? When you had to let go, and when you had to release that loved one, and you're still here in the sheepfold, that person is safe. You know why? Because of the shepherd. And not just because the shepherd is good. And the day is coming for me and for you too when that will happen. But because Jesus, can I just fast forward to Jesus now, please? Jesus, who said, I am the good shepherd, says, I know my sheep and they follow me, and I give eternal life to them and they never perish. I lay down, remember this? The good shepherd lays down his what? Life for his sheep. Our great shepherd, ready? Became the spotless, perfect lamb that was slain in our place as a substitute, who endured the wrath of God meant for us so that we might be forgiven and free. It's a care that not only says, yeah, I got you. It's a care that says, I died for you, and your greatest enemy has been overthrown, and I've rescued you. You are a sheep, not a wolf. You are a sheep, not a goat, because I have made you my sheep by becoming a sheep. So the shepherd who shepherds us became a sheep so that he could lead us to the place where goodness and mercy would follow us all the days of our life, and that we would truly dwell in the house of the Lord, in the place called heaven, our home forever. It's oftentimes at a memorial that I'll include this story that I think is a fitting way to end. And it's a question attached to it for your heart. Sitting on a platform one day was an old and young man before a vast audience of people who were part of a special program. Each of them was to cite the words of the 23rd Psalm. The young man, trained in the best speech technique and drama, went first. "The Lord is my shepherd," eloquently he spoke. And when he had finished, the audience clapped their hands and cheered, asked for an encore. Apparently that's a spectacular deliverance of Psalm 23. The other man on the stage was an older gentleman leaning heavily on his cane. And he stepped to the front of the same platform and with very feeble, shaking voice quoted the psalm. But when he was seated, no sound came from the listeners. In the silence, the young man stood to make the following statement. The young man, jumping back up, said, "Friends, I wish to make an explanation. You asked me to come back and repeat the psalm, but you remained silent when my friend here was seated. The difference I will tell you. I may know the psalm, but he knows the shepherd." The question that this invites you to ask this morning is, do you know the shepherd? There is such a profound love for you. There is such a goodness over you. But the promise that we said this morning applies only to his sheep. If you have not put your trust in Jesus Christ as your Lord and Savior, the invitation is what Jesus would say in John 10. I have other sheep that are not of this fold. I must go get them. Are you one of those that Jesus is calling this morning? I've asked Shannon to come and sing a song that I want to give as a gift to you this morning. I'm going to pray, but then I want you, if you know the song, you can sing it, but I want you to stay seated this morning. I think the words are going to be on the screen, but I want you to hear and receive in a way that I pray will be memorable and impactful for you, a truth about the love of God in Christ. There is a goodness over you. There is a love for you that's aimed at you that doesn't depend on you or what you've done. And if you're in the valley this morning and you're saying, "Lord, help me," I'm going to stand over here while she's singing. Just come up and let's pray. We don't need to go into all the detail of what it is. Just say, "I need help. Would you pour some of that oil on me through prayer?" I'd love to pray over you. But I want you to receive the ministry of music this morning, truth in these words about the love of God for you in Christ, a love that went so far that Jesus himself would lay down his life for you just to make you one of his sheep. And over you're going to hear, "Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you." As you hear that, would you just in your own heart say that again and again to the Lord for the work that he's done? She's going to sing. I'm going to stand over here. If you just want prayer, and even if it's unspoken, just come up. I'd love to cover you with that and have these truths sung over you.